and our live stream. Hello everybody once again. I'm really happy to meet all of you and our brilliant speaker today. This program takes place through the project Fostering University Enterprise Cooperation and Entrepreneurship of Students via Smart Cafe, co-financed by European Commission. And this event is one of the dissemination events which help our students to make links with the mentors, with the international organizations or public organizations which can help them in the development of their ideas. We have today a speaker, Kelsey, Miss Kelsey Walters, and she will tell us more than sure many interesting and very useful things and advices for our students. Miss Kelsey, can you please introduce yourself and start to our discussion for today?
Sure. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Rodica, for coordinating. I'm excited to be here. I also graduated from an agrarian state university, but in the United States. So I have a fond place in my heart for agricultural and technical universities and the systems and students that they have. So I'm happy to join you today. Happy to join Facebook. I haven't done a Facebook Live in a long time. So I'll introduce myself. My name's Kelsey Walters. I have been familiar with Moldova for a long time. Been living here back and forth. I originally came in 2007, a lifetime ago, as a Peace Corps volunteer. And I served through Peace Corps in the region of Caușen, and I learned how to speak Romanian. And eu pot să vorbesc și în limba română, but today we are speaking in English, so we'll continue to do that. But if you, dacă aveți întrebare în română, you can ask me, and I can respond, and we can figure out how to communicate. So I'm very open. After Peace Corps, I went back to the United States and I finished my master's degree also at Agrarian State University, so Oklahoma State University in Stillwater, Oklahoma, where I studied international studies, economics and finance. And then after graduating, I came back to Moldova, and my husband and I had started to reorganize these Soviet collective farms, and it was a privatized business. It was a registered LLC long before we got involved, but the operations and the mindset was still that of low productivity Soviet production systems. We laugh now, but at the time when we were starting farming, we were doing katocit, boronit, greblat, all of these different operations of rolling and raking and burning in the fields that we no longer do. So there's been really significant advancements in the technology that we use in agriculture in today's production systems. So I've been in Moldova for a long time. After we had been farming for a couple of years, I really got the itch to get back involved in technical areas. So I'm an agriculture economist, and I joined a consulting team in Chisinau, and we were working with the Millennium Challenge Corporation to ensure that we were designing irrigation systems in the correct way for farmers who are farming small parcels and smaller plots of farmland. And then immediately after that, I started a natural resource engineering company in the United States. And we have been working for the last 7 years implementing irrigation engineering projects, mostly in New Mexico, but also in Colorado, Arizona, and Utah, as well as in Moldova. And then a funny story, our main clients in New Mexico started growing what's called cannabis. And when you start growing cannabis, or some call this marijuana, it's not marijuana, but it's a form of that plant. You lose federal funding for any projects that you are implementing. And so the projects that we were helping our clients implement, which were pipeline installation and engineering design for water resource improvement, those all stopped. And then coronavirus pandemic hit. And my business partner and I thought, we might want to take a pause for a while. We don't see that these issues are going to resolve. And so in this moment, I decided to join USAID, and I accepted a position here in Moldova, and I've been working since January of this year as a project management specialist in the Office of Economic Growth. So it's a big story. It's kind of a sad story in a way, because I have managed a couple of different small businesses, and here today, we're going to talk about the process of creating an idea, of knowing when it's right, knowing when to move forward, but then also maybe knowing when to reorganize, step back, and look at new options. So, I've been a business owner. I've had a couple of different enterprises, and after you do this once or twice, you start to figure out the things that you want to do again and make improvements on, and the things that you don't want to do again. And so I know that Radhika put in the introduction to this event that I would talk about a couple of things. I think one of the terms was things I wish I knew when I started my first company. And so maybe we'll start there. And I made kind of a list, because when you're talking in a public format, it's always difficult to remember what you wanted to say. So forgive me as I look at my notes. But I think in a university setting, you guys are all very familiar with this, because you're making notes and following them, I think, as well. This is homework, right? So when I started my engineering company with my partners in the United States, if I would go back and do something differently, when we were setting up the original statutes and the original founding documentation, I realized that I was at a disadvantage because I was in Moldova, and I wasn't able to sit down across the table from them. We were in a telework environment because I was in Moldova and they were in the United States. And I wasn't able to clearly communicate the value set I was bringing to the company. And so when we were writing the statutes and the documentation, I wish I would have had a better mentor to sit down with me to help me better fight for the value my value proposition there. So when you're new at business and you're in a situation where you have people that you respect and have more experience than you, sometimes you are convinced to not raise issues, right? It's an issue, but I really don't want to say anything. You should. You don't get a second chance to go back and change it. And it's hard to have that courage at that point when you're starting a business. It's hard to have that courage to set up and say, I know I don't have as much experience as you, but this particular article in our contract does not seem like it is justly balanced. So you should raise that issue. When you see an issue, you don't get a second chance to go back and change it. So, we in this forum want to speak very openly and clearly. I want to give you insight. I want to hopefully provide you something that you can think about later that's valuable to you, not just a lot of fluff. So next thing, I wish I knew when I started my first company. There's no such thing as working hours. There's no 40-hour week. There's no 9 to 5. It's like, it's in one way, when I became a mother, and I was also managing a small company, you realize that nobody cares when you start and you stop your hours, and nobody cares if I've already worked 8 hours today. There's still more work to do. You've got to keep going until you finish. It's kind of like growing up on a farm. So the balance of, I also grew up on a farm and ranching scenario out in western Oklahoma, where we raise purebred Angus and Hereford cattle. And if your animals are not all fed, your work is not done. So to know that you have to keep going until you finish work, or until you send out that last email, or until you follow up with that last sales contact. There's no set working hours. It's hard. It's exciting. It is exciting. Um, Also very critical, and I think I knew this when I started my first company, but it's very critical to find your network, to find the people that you can work with and you can talk to, and you can review issues as you go along. And unfortunately, at that point for me in Moldova, there wasn't a lot of people, but I did have a core group. And I think depending on meeting up every once in a while to grab a beer with the group of people who were going through the same obstacles as I was, setting up a business and running a business and getting permits and authorizations through the Moldovan government, or the American government for that matter, because we were doing business in both countries. Having a network to compare notes with is really critical. It helps you get through these times where you're no longer as motivated to keep going. So, and then another one, as you're a student at the university, and I'm sure at some point you have talked about preparing business plans, and those are very important. And thinking through all of the elements that you may encounter when you start a business, to try to capture those in your business plan. It's also very important. But also know, you may have a perfect business plan and you may get an A or a very high mark, and you may have all sorts of very technical or very modern aspects to your business plan. When you actually start doing business, many of these will no longer matter, and many of these may not be correct once you actually dive in and realize that you need to make some modifications. So for example, when we set up a business plan to go into engineering consulting activities, and we put together cash flow budget. We put together kind of an annual revenue and expenditures outlay. We put together our HR scenario and our hiring policy and our staffing plan. And when we actually jumped in and opened the business and got everything set up, I think in the first 2 years, maybe 40% of our business plan actually held up, meaning that the other 60% we're not able to apply to our business, because as we started and as we were operating, we realized it no longer it was no longer important, or it was no longer applicable. So no, you can make the best business plan and you can get the best marks on it. But once you start, you're going to have to make lots of modifications quickly as you move along. All right. Going down my list. Oh. All right. Anybody can register an SRL, or an LLC, as we call it in the United States. Anybody can put the paperwork together and say they have a business, but very few people are able to navigate or to focus on that core value they bring to customers. So, oh great, you have a business. So what value proposition? What's your value proposition? What do you do? Do you have a 1 sentence or 2 sentences in your mind that really captures what you're providing? And that's really hard to do, because we knew what we were doing, providing irrigation engineering services. But sometimes we got confused about who we were providing it to. Our goal was to ensure that small farmers had the correct irrigation system for their needs. But often we were providing the services not to small farmers, but we were providing the irrigation services to associations or consulting for other consulting firms who were then writing financing proposals. So what we wanted to do with our services, but who we were, but how we were selling it were sometimes two different things. So it's not just your core value of what you are offering, a product or a service, but it's also who you are selling to and how you are selling it. That's very important when you start trying to send out invoices or land contracts. So things I learned along the way. And yeah, you've got to grow fast and you've got to get up fast. So there's a lot of getting knocked down and needing to get back up fast and be ready to go again. And it just takes I mean, you learn as you go along and you have to be ready to jump in. So we're going pretty fast. That was things I wish I knew. And I'm hoping that as we continue to move forward, somebody's going to have a question. So is anybody going to have a question? I'm making pauses, and that's okay. If you don't have a question yet, I think you'll probably develop questions as we go along.
I do.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you you told us that at the time you came in Moldova and wanted to start a business, it would be better to discuss with someone your plans, your struggles. But here in Moldova, we have something special. We don't want other people to know what we are going to do or what we would like to do, because it's bad. I don't know how to say. That means that it wouldn't happen. Yeah, that that's our problem. But I agree with you that it's better to discuss when we are at level, and to discuss with the people as we are. Yeah.
Just a second. Sorry, I think that what you're saying, Radhika, it's about that we don't want to share our ideas because the level of the business development, let's say in Moldova, is not so high, yeah, like in economically developed countries. So our people prefer to think that if they keep this in secret, then it will be better. But they don't realize really that as many feedback or views they have, then it will improve their value proposition. They will test their ideas. If market need this, if people want to buy these products or services. So we also can work on the mentality of the people, I think.
You need feedback, right? So having the confidence to vocalize your idea. I have a great idea, but I don't want people to call me stupid, right? I mean, I have an idea, I have an interesting idea. I need to talk to somebody about this. I need to share this idea, and they're going to give me their reaction, and then I look at their reaction, and then it either increases my confidence or it decreases my confidence. And so having, you know, when we were in Peace Corps, it was always so funny because we had lots of Americans in Moldova, and we're all going throughout the countryside, and we're so frustrated because we go to these alimentara and we say, I just want a cold bottle of water. And you know how it is in Moldova, maybe 10 years ago, you go in and the first thing the lady or the person who's selling vânzătorul, the first thing that the seller will say is, I can't sell you cold water, your throat will hurt. Eu nu pot să vă vin sticlă rece de apă, a să vă doare gâtul. And we said, I don't care. I will pay you not 10 lei for a bottle of water. I will pay you 20 lei for a cold bottle of water. And so, of course, this idea, will people pay more when you provide them an additional value added service? That person was not the right person to talk to about selling ice, right? You have to find the right person. Sometimes, unfortunately, in rural areas or small towns, it's hard to find somebody who appreciates new ideas. So at university, when I went to the university, I was so excited because typically that is where you will find a collection of people who think in new ways and appreciate new ideas. And generally at the university, what I see is people tend not to share their ideas because they don't want somebody to steal their idea. And that's also a relevant, so that's maybe the next step. Have an idea. Don't be afraid to share your idea, particularly when you're in a university setting with people who have read a lot and have seen different ideas and seen them implemented in different ways. But the next thing is, don't be scared that someone's going to steal your idea, because I've seen it a lot. They can't make your idea happen like you can. And regardless of how much you talk about it, they're still not going to get the essential piece of your vision for making that idea happen. So even if they say, oh, that's a pretty good idea, that doesn't mean they know the core value that you see in it in offering it to the public or developing it further. So don't be afraid that other people will steal your ideas. Sometimes it happens, and I've seen other people steal my ideas, which is fine. And I've seen them not quite know what I meant and they got it wrong. So, so don't be afraid to share ideas. But you do need to find a mentor. Okay. More questions? If no more questions, we'll wait around for a minute, then I will shuffle my papers and I'll go to our second topic of the day. So what does the term expert mean to you? Now, this is tricky because we're talking in a university setting, and it's important for, it is important to be a subject matter expert. But when you jump into the business world, it's very important to be able to decipher the word expert from somebody who can help you in a situation versus somebody who is maybe a consultant who's trying to get you to hire them to do your business for you in a way. So, and I bring up this topic because I was doing a TV interview and they introduced me as Kelsey Walters, the agricultural expert. And I thought, that's really funny. How can they say that? I am still struggling to change the things I want to change. I'm still working towards taking theory and things that I've seen, and I'm struggling to make sure that they're implemented. And so when they presented me as Kelsey Walters, the expert, it took me a while to go through this notion of expert and to break it down into further pieces. It did not make me comfortable to be called expert because I did not think I deserved it. And so I think it's important to bring this topic up because as an entrepreneur and as somebody who has a business idea, sometimes you have to accept the term expert before you think you really are. Sometimes you have to straighten your shoulders and you have to say, yes, hi, I am Kelsey Walters. I am the expert in this topic. I'm still struggling to apply new technologies as I see them and as they develop. I have things I'm still trying to expand in my notion of this subject. But yes, I do have enough experience and technical knowledge to call myself an expert. Can you do that? At what point do you think you can call yourself an expert, right? It takes a while. I think we're all on a professional development journey, and it takes a while to match what you learn at university with what you get in real world experience to get into a situation where you can go from being a student to now being a professional? And then at what point do you let yourself be called expert, or when you let yourself accept and champion the idea that you're an expert? So it takes a while. The second piece of this comment about what does the term expert mean to you is not everybody who calls themselves an expert is an expert. And this happens, I think, a lot in Moldova. I think it happens a lot in the United States as well. But once you start getting more experience, you realize that the people who called themselves experts weren't always an expert. So in the discussion of how to take an idea and create a startup, my advice is you do want expert feedback, but don't always solicit feedback from somebody who calls themselves an expert. Also solicit feedback from people who might have had a lot of practical or dirty hands experience in the field that you're looking at. So we laugh, you know, some people know how to write a great paper, but they don't know how to handle the, they start the shovel. The expression is theory and practice sometimes don't combine well. And so when you go out into the world of startups, just like we talked about the business plan, taking what you have from theory and putting it into application. Sometimes the people who are able to guide you on theory aren't always able to guide you on application. So you need to broaden the number of people who you can talk to, seek new people on providing you advice on how to get your idea into application, into the real world. So I also added a couple of more points, but in case anybody has a couple of questions, does anybody have a question? I'm sure somebody's dying to ask me about agriculture. Nobody dying to ask about agriculture? Okay, nobody dying. So the next thing I would like to talk to you about university students, if I could tell you a couple things that you need to really take away from university to set yourself up well. Public speaking skills, being able to volunteer and to gain the courage to come into a platform like this and speak to other people. It's part of that, what we call, when do you allow yourself to be called an expert? Sometimes being called an expert is not about what you know, but it's about how you present yourself. So if you are starting a new business and you're trying to share your idea with potential investors or people who might be able to give you, hey, I need $500 to get this, to build a prototype. You have to confidently be able to share your idea with others. So you have to put yourself into a vulnerable position to speak about something that you're passionate about, and you need experience, or you need to practice doing that more than one time. So it takes a bit of time. The next thing at university, I would suggest, if you could get more skills in making spreadsheets and working in Microsoft Excel. I see from experience in Moldova that I've worked with a lot of different companies, a lot of IT companies from the United States, and they come in and they say, you know, we had a really great proposal from this group, but it was in Microsoft Excel, Word, and in Microsoft Word, they put in tables in Word, and we were trying to understand what the numbers meant. So we ended up making a spreadsheet for them. So what should they have done? Well, they should have made the spreadsheet first. It's very important that in today's world, we work first in spreadsheets and in data in a well-managed system. So if you are forcing the people to put it into a spreadsheet so they can see the data better, then you're losing points as you get started. So learning how to be comfortable taking your ideas and putting them into a spreadsheet, I think, is a really important part of the process, because that's where you start to do idea validation. Usually is in a spreadsheet, not in a Word document. Ideas are great, but you have to start putting numbers to them. You have to understand which part of the equation comes first and which part of the equation is bigger than the other pieces of your startup idea. And you can only do that and organize it well in a spreadsheet. So yeah, and also, I mean, generally the things that we needed from our employees when we were hiring engineers and technical specialists to do engineering design, drafting, 3D modeling, and prototyping. First, we started in a spreadsheet to explain technically the parameters of our project. And then everybody was assigned a specific piece, and it was all done in a spreadsheet. And when we first hired staff, so oftentimes they had a hard time creating formulas in Excel, not merging cells, not writing text, but using a spreadsheet as it's supposed to be used in tabular format, and with uniform numerical design. All right, off of that soapbox, but that's something I'm very passionate about, is because we see it we don't see it often enough, is that we're working in a system where we can share well-organized numbers in Moldova. And I had something about, the things I did not know about Moldova when I came here and when I started working. Let me rephrase the things I did know about Moldova. So I came back to Moldova and I knew a couple of things and I was excited about them. And one of the things that's really special in Moldova is that here you have access to a lot of resources to help you create a prototype and to help you get to those first few stages in entrepreneurship. So having an idea, validating an idea, creating a minimum viable product, right? So just a prototype to get you started. And if it's a product and if it's a technical product, then the availability of tooling, manufacturing, or Soviet manufacturing shops and old engineering professionals that know how these things work, the availability of them here is astounding and is really helpful when you're trying to build something. It's accessible. In the United States, to try to find somebody who has an engineering background but also knows how to use tools to build a piece of metal that goes into your contraption is almost impossible. You can do it now in the realm of 3D modeling and 3D printing, but 3D printing sometimes still doesn't suffice for somebody knowing why you need to design it in a certain way. And in Moldova, we have access to a lot of different professionals that still know the underlying reasons of design of industrial products. So that's really cool. The bad thing about Moldova is that the market domestically is so small that when you start out, you need to start out thinking about external markets. And that's a difficult part in Moldova, is that it's hard to get product validation because the domestic market's so small. So you're always looking for external market validation. You're trying to showcase your product or service outside of Moldova as you're just getting started, so that you design it in a way that it's viable also outside as well as inside Moldova, but also outside Moldova. And so that is an obstacle that other people don't have. But it's something that can be overcome. It's just that you have to be aware of it up front as you're starting out. Let's see. I also had on my list some top skills you should develop outside of university to give you an advantage if you pursue employment after school and you're trying to get employed with an international company in Moldova. And I see from just being in the international community what the skill sets that are solicited in our applicants are. Use of data and spreadsheets is one, is being able to communicate clearly technical language in a not just Microsoft Word, but also spreadsheets. And persuasive writing. So can you write in a way where you say, here, I'm writing this letter, I need this by, here's the time frame, I need this by next Friday. I'm writing this to you because I saw X, Y, and Z has already happened. I'm trying to be, to take it a step ahead. I need an action on, so you write in your letter the time sensitivity. You write a paragraph about the background, so the person's informed and they don't have to find other data. And then you write what you need from them specifically before you send an email. And that way somebody can open up your message, they can read it, and they can respond to it without losing a lot of other time finding background data, understanding why, understanding when. And that's a very, very valuable asset that we see. And gender norms awareness. I would say this is probably one of the biggest ones. It's one of the biggest ones that comes out almost immediately and can be really life or death in your application process. So men, if you come into a scenario or an interview and you stand up and you shake the man's hand across the table, but you don't shake the woman's hand, they notice that. And that's probably the end of your interview. Women, if you notice that somebody didn't shake your hand, it's your responsibility to extend your hand and say, yes, I'm also at the table and I expect you to shake my hand. So women have to be assertive and say, I'm also a professional in this situation. Please acknowledge me as a professional. And the men have to say, oh, every woman here is a professional, not just the foreign women, but everybody, women or men. So we also notice how as soon as we leave the meeting room, the men group off in their own group and then go shake hands and have go have coffee. If there is not gender respectfulness on both sides, I'll just say in the international community, we notice that. So it's very important to have to be respectful on both sides and to not assume that when you walk into a room that the men are the bosses and that the woman is the secretary, because that happens a lot. And in the situations of international programming and international companies, oftentimes the woman is the boss and the man is the assistant. And so when that gets mixed up, just because of local gender norms, it creates a big awkward space. I won't say anymore. I think that's enough, but that's very that's something that's highlighted a lot and it's talked about internally, but I think it's important to speak it out loud too. So, all right, I think I'm almost through my list, my homework list. I had some great illustrations I wanted to share with you, but I don't think I have the ability to share my screen. So maybe we can post those later. It's talking about, Elena,
Yes, I just allowed you to share your screen, sorry.
okay, cool. Well, bear with me for just a second and let me try to do this. And all right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And it says how not to build a minimum viable product. Can you see these cars here? So this is important, and this is something that's really hard to learn. You know, you're trying to make something perfect. And sometimes it's not about being perfect, it's about being first to market. And so the logical way to start something is to start piece by piece by piece. On option 2 here, we started with a scooter, and then we did a complete redesign and we went to a bicycle, and then another redesign, we went to a motorcycle, and finally a major overhaul, and we end up with a car. Can you imagine how expensive that would be? And in the bottom, from the very beginning, we knew what we were trying to do. And we just said, we're going to throw something together and it's not going to be pretty. And then we found an extra part, and this car is put together with different colored pieces. It's not beautiful, but it's doing the core function. And then finally, we start adding some design, right? We start making it look better till we finally have the product that everybody had. This is probably the cheapest way to start out, just throwing it together. And so I think in an entrepreneurial environment, it's really easy to get caught up into trying to make something perfect. And often, I'm going to stop. I think everybody's seen my car illustration, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I think in an entrepreneurial atmosphere, it's so hard to look past perfect and to say, okay, well, this is good enough. Now let's start getting market feedback. So if we wait until it's perfect, it's never going to happen. And I have a problem with this. I really like to have good design aesthetics, and I want to make sure that it's presentable. It's really hard not to get caught up on perfect. Sometimes it's just good enough, because once you move away from university, nobody's going to give you a grade. You know, so it needs to be, there's a certain way you need to present your projects at university, but then when you start presenting them to consumers, you have to really balance the time available with the resources available with needing to get those first sales. So, all right, Radhika, Elena, thank you for inviting me. I think at this point we can open it up to questions and talk about any other final elements that anybody might want to discuss.
Yes, thank you very much, Kelsey. It was really very interesting, and what I just was thinking about, that you touched the main essential and key points, the most important for those who are thinking to launch their business or who started, because in these both cases, it's very important to understand what actually you are going to do. You can register your LLC and try to do something, but when you don't know it, you don't have a mentor near you who can guide you and advise. It's the same like you didn't start it at all. So thank you very much for your presentation also, and I will, I did the print screen, and I will publish this as well on our group because I really like this, and what all that you told previously about the skills, work with the Microsoft, and this also are reflected in these pictures as well. What I wanted to ask you, actually, you told that we have different types of resources for prototyping. Can you please share with us these resources? Because Maybe I'm not aware so much with this topic, but I would like our students know about this more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first of all, it depends on what you're trying to build, right? It depends on what product if you're talking about a product, if we're talking about a mechanical product, the Chisinau has a rich history of industrial manufacturing areas. So you can go to certain parts of Chisinau where you can meet somebody who knows how to cut a piece of glass at a specific angle, right? You can find somebody who can create a metal fitting at the right specification, right? You can find somebody who knows how to put these pieces together. In the United States, to be able to find all of those components in one city would be difficult. I think here we have a much higher concentration in Chisinau of people who have been involved in these industrial processes because of the inherited industrial investment from the Soviet Union. The problem for me, of course, is that most of these people speak Russian and I'm unable to directly communicate with them because I don't speak Russian. But if I bring a translator, I've always been overwhelmingly surprised at the amount of technical capabilities that still exist here in Chisinau. If you need to build something, you can find somebody to help you build something.
Thank you very much. Yes, I also see that we have these elements of good architecture, and sometimes while walking through the city, I watch these buildings and I like them, and we need just a good restoration of them, and also other skills to be developed, not only through the network of Smart Cafe. But what you told us about the need to go on the direction of the external markets, it's true actually, and that's why we are thinking to develop also internet, let's say, digital skills of our students, and we have a couple of trainings for them as well. So thank you very much also for approaching this type of trainings or topics. I don't know, maybe other participants also have questions, because I can continue, but maybe they want to say also something.
It's a good chance to speak up and say something. It's always who can find the courage to be the one to step up and say something. So finding opportunities to be courageous.
And profit from the experience and different point of view and other on different things. For me, it was very interesting to also hear about how ladies should proceed in different situations. And thanks.
Well, Elena, I'll shake your hand. We sometimes, in a digital environment, it's really hard to continue that type of interaction, and so a lot of the times throughout my professional experience on the day, we give a lot of high fives sometimes we'll do a thumbs up, I think, but it's, sometimes we do a fist pump, everybody knows how that works. And so I think it's just also finding in a telework situation how we can maintain personal connections with other people that we see through our screens. And then when we do meet, it's very important to shake hands in a safe manner now within the pandemic. But the men still shake hands. And so now for women, we've been out, everybody's been teleworking for so long. It's important to remember to stick our hand out and assert that we're also professional and say, I'd like to shake your hand.
True, agree.
All right. Well, I think today we're over with questions. It seems, And I really appreciate the invitation to join you and speak to your smart cafe group of people that have joined the group here on Facebook. I'm always happy to join and provide further insight, and I wish everybody very good luck. You're welcome to reach out, and we're all here in Chisinau. It's a very small community, and so I wish everybody great luck. And I know there are more and more resources available to people who have ideas for entrepreneurship, particularly students in Chisinau, in this new environment.
Thank you very much, Kelsey, for your acceptance to join us. And even if it's a good opportunity to communicate through online channels, I think it will be very nice to meet you in person one day and shake your hand as well.
Would be my pleasure.
State Agrarian University at Smart Cafe Auditorium.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
All right.
And excuse me that I was so I don't know, every day. Please.